Hi guys, today we're going to be doing the truth table, and right here in these columns I've already set up all of the possible true and false combinations for P and Q, and we're going to be looking for the negation of Q, P and the negation of Q, P then Q, and the negation of P then Q. So right here I gave you the definition of a negation, and it gives the opposite truth value. So to find the negation of Q, we are going to see Q is true, so the opposite of true would be false. False. The opposite of false is true. The opposite of true is false. And the opposite of false is true. So right there we already have the negation of Q, or the opposite of Q. Now we're going to be looking for P and the negation of Q. So for P and the negation of Q, we're going to look at the column P and the column negation of Q. So if P is true and the negation of Q is false, then it's going to be false because they both aren't true. P is true and the negation of Q is true, so that makes it true because they are both true. P is false and the negation of Q is false, so therefore they are both false. P is false, the negation of Q is true, so that makes it false because once again they are not both true. Now we're going to look at P then Q. So for P then Q, you're going to look at P, which is true, and Q, which is true, and think. A way that I remember this is, did you keep your promise? So if you did P, then did you do Q? So P is true, Q is true, so therefore they're both true because you did them. P is true and Q is false, so you didn't keep your promise, so therefore it is false. P is false and Q is true, so therefore you did keep your promise even though this was false. Lastly, P is false and Q is false, so therefore it is true. In our last column here, we're looking for the negation of P then Q. So to find the negation of P then Q, remember it's just the opposite. So right here we can actually just look at this column and decide what the opposite of those is. So opposite of true is false, opposite of false is true, opposite of true is false, and opposite of true is false. So our question for this problem is P then Q the negation or the opposite of P and the negation of Q. So P then Q is this right here, and P and the negation of Q is here. So remember, negation is opposite. False, true, that's the opposite. True, false, that's the opposite. False, true is the opposite. And false, true is the opposite. So for this question, I would say yes. P then Q is the negation of P and the negation of Q.